The Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to this regular meeting of the Attleboro School Committee. Just a reminder that this meeting is being electronically recorded. First item on our agenda are the minutes from our meetings of January 25th, February 22nd, March 10th, and March 28th. The draft minutes were circulated among committee members. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda. We have a motion to accept a donation from Wendy De Silva in the amount of $30 to the Attleboro High School Model UN in memory of Doug Matthews.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of 2 cases of paper per school from an anonymous donor to Hyman Fine, Studley, and Thatcher.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Ms. Quinn?
I know I'm relatively new here, but I keep seeing cases of paper pop up on our consent agenda. Is there a paper shortage that I'm unaware of? Why do we keep needing paper donated?
Paper is rationed. Our paper budget is such that it's a commodity, to be sure.
But there's not a paper shortage.
There's not a shortage.
But it's
But
not.
It's not something that you can just take as much as you want to.
Okay.
So we're thankful for all the paper that we can get.
So if there were not donations, would there be a shortage?
No?
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation to Attleboro High School Best Buddies in the amount of $168.30 from the Attleboro Booster Club, Inc., 50/50.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of 1 HP Chromebook 11G4 Celeron and licensor for same with an estimated value of $231.81 to Beth Batar's grade 3 class at Willow Elementary from, I apologize, Tangender Parmar.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation from the Attleboro Youth Association of $2,000 worth of infield mix to fix up the infields of both the baseball diamonds at Thatcher Elementary School. This work will be after school hours or on weekends, not while school is in session.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve a field trip proposal for 140 8th grade Coelho students to attend High Meadows in Granby, Connecticut on June 9th.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our consent agenda. Moving on to our business agenda tonight. First item is an item we've discussed the last few meetings. It's the implementation of changes to Code of Massachusetts Regulations 603, Section 4.00 regarding Tri-County and the CTE program. Mr. Sheehan, if you could give us an update as to where we stand right now.
All the communications have taken place between the superintendent, Stephen Dockery, and myself. I had a meeting with Mr. Dockery as well, reviewing all the material. At the same time, we've involved the Director of Student Services at Tri-County. As it stands right now, we had 23 students who applied. In my conversation with Mr. Dockery, he was looking at 10 of our students being accepted into the Tri-County program. And the situation is very simple, that the school committee and myself are at a point that we're looking to comply with the new legislation, the new law in CMR. And that requires all of our freshman students to attend our exploratory program. Whoever put the law together, I think that to a degree it was a little bit short-sighted, only because we have students who are looking to go into Tri-County into programs that we don't have and that they ordinarily would have been accepted into by tri-county standards, whatever. I like the idea that our kids are going to our own programs. But at the same time, for our students to go to tri-county their sophomore year, they in fact are going to be one semester behind the other students at tri-county. The dilemma that we have is that will those slots be available and still exist when our sophomores then apply to those programs? And the letter that was written by Mr. Dockery to the 23 parents in Attleboro is that that was somewhat remote, that those slots would in fact still be available. It prompted the conversation with Mr. Dockery and myself to look at potential options. What are some of the things that we can do that still stay within the confines of the law? And what can we work on for the benefit of our students in Attleboro and allow them to attend Tri-County without being a semester behind. And so that's where we are, and that's what you saw in the packet of last in the school committee with the PowerPoint presentation. And that was about, you want me to share that, Stephen? Go.
Well, you know, let me just step in real quick and say, we've had numerous conversations with our legal counsel, who has shared numerous conversations he's had with DESE, the CTE program up there, and more importantly, really for our purposes, he's had with the legal counsel of DESE up there. And their messages have universally been that the regulation was meant for purposes like where we find ourselves in Attleboro, which is if we have an exploratory program, the students entering high school should attend Attleboro for that exploratory program. The one exception they continuously mention to us is the agricultural program. I believe there were some parents or community members who found a statute, Chapter 76, Section 12, and there was some confusion as to whether or not that applied. That's a provision that allows the school committee to authorize sending students to another district. And we were, the interpretation we received, which makes sense to me from a legal standpoint, is that this is an old statute. You can't use an old statute to usurp the purpose of a new regulation. And this newer regulation was set for this exact situation, and so you can't go back to a completely unrelated statute to try and get around it. And that's what our legal counsel has told us. So again, I think the school committee and the school department has worked hard on this, knowing that it's an important issue for families, trying to find a way around it. But the legal interpretations and advice we've received has been uniform and strong on this. That being said, we know it's important, and so I've talked with the administration and we've looked at possible ways to address the issue. And one of the ways is something that Mr. Superintendent Sheehan, Superintendent Dockery had spoken about before, which is a way to try and prevent the students that would be going to Tri-County after coming to Attleboro from falling behind, and that being allowing our students to complete the exploratory program early in their freshman year so they could transfer into Tri-County by December. And that was something that's been discussed with Superintendent Dockery about, even saving spaces for that purpose, and he's indicated a willingness to do so. So I think before we open up discussion, Superintendent Sheehan, if you want to just kind of expand on that.
Yeah, when we met 2 weeks ago, Stephen Dockery and myself, it was about looking at all sorts of ways, knowing what was in front of us, knowing what the facts were about filling slots and so forth. And we came up with the idea that we both agreed that, first of all, that we don't make the decision, our two school committees would make the decisions. And what would take place is that our students, all 23, would in fact be attending, or the 23 students that apply for Tri-County, they would be enrolled in our exploratory program that's been approved by the state, and continue to go through that as their freshman year. Mr. Dockery and myself agreed that he would hold slots for students that, in fact, if we could start them in the second half, the second semester, that we would look at doing that, and those students could apply, or We'd still look at their applications going forward, and I would have similar conversation with Mr. Dockery. My plan is to put if the school committee were to look at exploring the possibilities of this and what it looks like, I'd be involving the high school principal, the CTE director, new director, and the one retiring, as well as our guidance department head and their director of student services and their guidance department head as to what do we do to make this a smooth transition that does two things. Our students don't go into the program later than their students, and that we in fact can check the box off that we have complied with CMR 603 404.031B.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Storrs?
What is the requirement for exploratory? How long do they have to attend, or how many courses do they have to explore? What is the requirement to meet that requirement?
Right now, our exploratory program is two trimesters. That's why I'm involving the principal and the new CT director and so forth. Is this about taking those kids who in fact want to go into a different discipline that we don't offer and look at a different exploratory program here to match up the number of hours that are required, all those pieces? That's what that team is going to be doing.
So we don't know how many hours is required?
I don't know how many hours are required for an approved exploratory program.
That's
No.
what I was wondering. Okay.
I think there are
I know
a
that,
number of
excuse me,
steps. I mean, one is, as he mentioned, working out how those students would be able to get through the exploratory program, and also, working with DESE and their legal department and making sure whatever, we do, checks the box of satisfying the regulation. Mr. Geddes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sheen, you mentioned a few times that there were 23 applicants, 10 Tri-County was planning to admit.
yes.
So two questions. One, were the 10 families notified before the regulation, before we were,
That's an excellent question.
and let me ask the follow-up too,
Yeah.
because your answer may relate to both. Were the 10 families notified, and down the road, would all 23 applicants be reviewed? Because you said there would be a second application review period. Would all 23 be reviewed, or just those 10?
I don't know the answer to that second one, because
Okay.
I'd have to ask Mr. Dockery that question. I do have a new timeline, however, from Mr. Dockery that helps us, that goes beyond April 1st.
Okay.
So that helps us it gives us some time. Not much time. Because Superintendent Dockery, in fact, shared with me the list of students in his own writing when I had the meeting with him 2+ weeks ago, I was under the assumption that, in fact, Tri-County had, in fact, notified those 10 students and their parents that they were going to be, or if something were to change, they would be accepted into the program. Conversely, I was hoping that when you had the 10 selected, that the 13 would have been given a fallen sparrow letter, that in fact they were not accepted into the program. I met with two very nice sets of parents this last Friday, and was to find out that Tri-County had not sent any letters to them with regard to being accepted or denied acceptance into the program. In other words, they heard from me.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Larson?
Yeah, that was both my questions. Thank you.
I have, I guess, two questions. And is Tri-County on trimesters like us, or they're half year and half year?
They're on quarterly and half year
Okay.
or semester courses.
So I guess my next question is, if for some reason we could find a path that makes this work, and I have my doubts about that, but that's another issue. I can foresee the kids, our students, having to be here through the second trimester to finish, I'm assuming, the hours necessary to complete an exploratory program. So they would be transferring not only after the exploratory, but most likely halfway through a math class, and halfway through an English class, and halfway through a science class, and all the other classes that they're in, and I'm on my third child at the high school, so I know sometimes in a trimester situation, you have the first half of the class first trimester and the second half of the class third trimester, just because that's how the schedule just works out. And I guess so I'm trying to take the subject, I guess, a little bit further beyond just exploratory. And I mean, our schedule works well for us if the students stay here all 4 years and we can get the classes through. I guess my concern is for someone leaving either halfway through or 2/3 of the way through and trying to complete by the end of their freshman year all the necessary things for them to be eligible to be a sophomore somewhere. My feeling is this is bigger than just exploratory.
It's absolutely involves their other academic programs, Mr. Lawson, as well as the exploratory. That's why all of those people are going to have to be put together. Their guidance department heads and the student services people, et cetera. But I think to a large degree, we face that almost every single day. We have students who transfer to Attleboro High School who are in quarterly and semester courses in their schools. And so when you come here and you're transferred into trimester courses, you actually get grades or approximate grades that then get applied partway through the school year of the school that they're coming from. So we deal with that every day anyways. But again, it does complicate the entire piece. That's why when I talked to Chairman Withers, really about getting permission from the school committee to explore this and what are the possibilities and what are the pitfalls or what are the challenges ahead of us if we should look at this in an earnest way.
And what was the new deadline that you received from?
May 1st.
May 1st. Quinn?
If I'm understanding you correctly, Superintendent Jean, if those students who were deemed accepted, those 10, if we continue the plan as it potentially could be, would those 10 students who are would be accepted, would their spots as it stands now be held?
That was part of our initial conversation Thursdays ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, and yes, at that time, Superintendent Dockery said he would hold those slots for the second semester.
So, and I could be wrong on this, I didn't go through the CTE program, but my thought is that while the exploratory is a good introductory piece just to see if there's a potential fit that you may not have considered, the most important piece of it is starting with the program that you believe that you want to explore on time. So I think that, while the hours may not align perfectly with the trimester versus semester, if we did make that transition where students were transferring at the end of December or whatever the case may be, that the transition for the CTE piece of it or the vocational piece of it would probably be minimal because everybody would be starting that next semester from whatever their expected vocation would be. But what you would potentially have to do is just line up the curriculum maps from what the students were taking versus what's offered at Tri-County. But I feel like that could be more feasible, and for those students who really want to make it happen, as somebody who's transferred before, it's less than ideal. But it's much better that you're transferring at the beginning of your freshman year than, let's say, sophomore year or junior year or down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's certainly not a a perfect solution, but it is it's a compromise, and in a situation where we've been looking for possible compromises and haven't been able to find any that that work. So I think it certainly is beneficial in my mind to have Superintendent Sheehan and his team investigate with his counterparts at Tri-County how this could be implemented in a way that is most beneficial for the students, that satisfies the regulation, most beneficial for the students that would be transferring potentially, that satisfies the regulation, and also wouldn't be detrimental to students that were taking the exploratory program here and planning on staying at Attleboro High. Mr. Larson?
I'm concerned about the May 1st deadline because there's obviously sounds like a lot of details to be worked out. And I think before we take the issue up as a vote, we're going to need some sort of opinion from DESI, if they're going to accept the path that we attempt to work out with ourselves and.
In my conversation with Superintendent Dockery and other people who have contacted the Department of Education, my understanding is that if compromises are reached or options are reached by the superintendent and school committee in Attleboro, DESI will 100% support what our efforts are by which to allow the students to go to Tri-County in the second semester.
And do you think we can get that in a somewhat timely manner?
I've already
once we-
had 2 hours into this as the possibilities with Superintendent Rooney. I broached the subject with our CTE Director, Sue Edmonds, and we're ready to get going in it wholeheartedly if in fact the school committee wishes to explore this further.
Yeah, so I think, we would need to have a report back on the 25th, which is our next meeting, with all that information, and provided that we had the positive report from you as to your conversations with Superintendent Dockery, and we had the positive reports from our CTE directors, outgoing and incoming, and Principal Rooney, and the appropriate legal opinions. I mean, those are all the things that we need.
And
that
I'll
data.
also get something from the Department of Education with regard to
Right, yeah.
where they stand on
Yeah.
where our moves are.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Storrs?
If we have to go forward and take the students, and meaning we don't get anything back from the Department of Ed saying that we are allowed to send the students to Tri-County and that we are forced to do this. Mr. Larson's comments is something that does concern me. I think that part of the discussion has to be, how can we ensure that these students not only have the ability to meet the exploratory requirements, but also are given their core subjects in trimester 1. They have to have those core, otherwise when they arrive at Tri-County, they're going to be woefully behind, which we should do our best to mitigate. So I think that has to be part of the discussion, is
It's-
making sure those
it's-
core subjects are the part of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, at this point, I guess we'd just be looking for a motion to instruct Superintendent Sheehan to form a committee to explore this possibility as we've been discussing.
So moved.
With the presentation to be made on
On April
April
25th.
21st with,
Is there any comments from the parents?
We have an open forum later in the agenda where parents can speak.
and pending confirmation with DESI as well. Is that correct? Just so we're all clear.
So the motion's on the floor.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that this motion is just to guide the administration to look further into this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all this motion is doing at this time.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And thank you, Superintendent Sheehan, for the information. We'll look forward to the report on the 25th. Administrative vacancies update. It says Stephen K. Withers Jr., but I'm going to ask Assistant Superintendent Sawyer to take the lead on this one.
Thank you. Tonight we have a couple introductions, an announcement, and then a few updates. But to kick us off, let's start with Ms. Regan could join us, and Mr. Rich, if you'd like to join us as well, please. Ms. Regan has been very busy, as you're about to see, working on some important searches that she has completed, and the first relates to Hill Roberts, where we're excited to introduce to you this evening the next principal of Hill Roberts, Mr. Frank Rich, who's with us this evening. As Mr. Sheehan and I can both attest, when we met with the finalist, Mr. Rich really, we felt like, fit the bill for exactly what we were looking for, and that we believe Hill Roberts needs, and we are excited to be able to bring him forward today. Ms. Regan can speak a little bit about the process, how he got to us.
So thank you for tonight. I do want to thank the screening committee that dedicated all of their time to the whole entire process, including Mr. Storrs. He was on our committee. And we do have some people here. Ms. Martin, principal at Hyman Fine. Megan Young, Marilyn Hanley, Carrie Hutchins, Mary Dugan, Terry Hughes, and Ms. Kim Sherman. There were 2 parents on the committee as well, Amy Riendo and Mr. Brian Kelly. They were unable to make it tonight, but they did wish their well wishes to Mr. Rich. When the committee first met, we put together a set of criteria, and Mr. Rich met that criteria. He had both classroom and administrative experience. He had experience pulling teachers, staff, and families together as one. He actually was instrumental in working with 2 different schools and bringing them together as one gigantic school, as he explained today. And also, it was clear that through his interview, he shares our same mission and vision. So I am proud tonight to introduce you to Mr. Rich.
I'd like to thank you all for welcoming me tonight, and echo Mr. Riggins and thanking the search committee that put in all the time and effort. I'm sure that's a really long and difficult process, and also Ms. Regan, Mr. Sawyer, and Mr. Sheehan for having that belief in me that I was the final candidate who really fit the bill in order to help bring Hill Roberts along. And certainly one of the things I've shared throughout the process is how inspiring your vision for the future of the Attleboro Public Schools is, and that's something that was very attractive to me when I was searching for my own career advancement, and something that played a large role in having me show interest in Attleboro. And I'm very excited that the team felt that I was the best candidate to help lead the school toward that mission, and I'm very excited to be joining the Attleboro schools.
Thank you, and welcome. We look forward to working with you, hopefully for a long time to come. A very important building in our city, and I think you'll enjoy it. I've heard great things from those who are on the search committee about your interviews and your candidacy. So we're happy to have you aboard, and thank you for joining us. Does anyone else have any questions, Mr. Quinn?
Just out of curiosity, background in teaching, what have you done previously, and how did you end up in Attleboro?
That's a great question. Now it's back to the interview here.
Do you want to switch seats?
Yeah,
No?
sure. My own teaching experience, I was a 6th grade teacher for 9 years at the Ethel Olmsted School in Easton, which then they moved us over to the middle school.
Okay.
I was I started as all subjects, and then they sort of specialized us, and I sort of focused on math and science. And then the last 4 years I've been an assistant principal, and sort of Easton went through this ambitious project where we had the Olmsted School, where I was hired as a teacher, and the Richardson School, which were attached and shared a common cafeteria, library, and gym area to sort of bring them together into one leadership model instead of both schools having their own principal. And like I said previously, what really brought me to Attleboro was the time and energy and the excitement of the vision for the district. And one small personal piece is Attleboro reminds me a lot of my one of my 2 hometowns where I grew up. I'm from Western Mass originally, if anyone's heard of Williamstown, or North Adams is the town, much more like Attleboro than Williamstown, but sort of having a similar feel to the towns that I grew up in, and it felt like a really good fit.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you up at the desk again come next year, and best of luck. Best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, now we'll ask Ms. Goldstein to join us. As we discussed earlier this year, in filling the vacancy created by Lori taking the assistant superintendent job, we needed to fill her position, but we decided to make some adjustments to that, and we changed what was a K-8 ELA coordinator into a K-12 humanities coordinator. And Ms. Regan has completed the process for that position, and we are excited to bring you her replacement, Ms. Goldstein.
So again, I'd like to thank the search committee that was a part of that. It was Mr. Toby Reed, he's the chair of the high school history department. Linda Ferreira, she's the K-8 mathematics coordinator. Brenda Swintak, she is an elementary literacy coach at Willett. So It is my pleasure to recommend, with the approval of the Central Administration, Donna Goldstein as the K-12 Humanities Coordinator. She began as a grade 8 English Language Arts teacher at Wamsutta Middle School and then continued over to Coelho as the literacy coach. And while she was there, she participated in several different committees, both at the state level and the local level. The Assessment Development Committee for Massachusetts, as well as the model curriculum units. And within our district, she was instrumental in helping us develop our own curriculum for English Language Arts. So at this point, I could not be more proud to introduce her to you as the K-12 Humanities Curriculum Coordinator. So.
Thank you, Lori. Hi, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. It's an honor to be here tonight. But more importantly, it's a privilege to work with students of Attleboro, and I love being an educator in Attleboro. My vision and hope for this position in particular align directly with the district's strategic plan, especially around the learning and culture pillars. I love working with curriculum. A humanities approach that this position, this kind of newly envisioned position takes reflects how we think, how we solve problems, how we create. It synthesizes ideas and resources from multiple places, and that's just like real life, and that is our mandate, to help our students become college and career ready. So a humanities approach makes a tremendous amount of sense as a thinker and a learner. Just very quickly, it's a really exciting opportunity. I'm honored to be selected, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And, well, I guess not welcome since you've been here, but
Yeah, I see a lot of familiar
congratulations on the new position. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about the fact that the new position and what your thoughts are on expanding at both the grade level but also the subject material.
Absolutely. So the greatest leverage I find in this position is the literacy standards, are the literacy standards, because they span, it's not just an ELA consideration. In order for our students to meet the demands that the standards have put in front of us in life itself, students need to be literate. We are bombarded with, we have visual images, we have social media, we have, there's just images and words all around us, and we need to be able to take that in. We need to be critical. We need to understand it to be able to articulate what we think about it. We can't just passively receive. We need to be able to respond and react responsibly and critically. So literacy, that overarching span of literacy, is the leverage into a reading-based curriculum like history and social studies, and it just completely complements the skills that we work on in ELA. So that it's just a natural combination.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, again, congratulations.
Yeah.
Look forward to working with you in the future, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to announce this evening what the involved schools already learned last week, which is that we are transferring the current assistant principal at Coelho Middle School, Ms. Kelly Schwinnard, to Brennan to fill the vacancy created by Fred's appointment as a principal. I should call him Dr. Souza. We believe that this move will enhance the district as a whole. It will provide support where we have a new administrator and put the vacancy where we have an experienced administrator. We also think that Ms. Schwinnard is a good match for what Mr. Souza was looking for, Dr. Souza was looking for, and we believe that this move will allow both schools to prosper. So we have posted the vacancy at Coelho, and Mr. Bowles is actively putting together his team and looks forward to finding a replacement for Ms. Schwinnard, who he appreciates the year that she served at Coelho.
And how about the other positions that are still open or being search process ongoing?
Yeah, so we are in the midst of the special ed director process. We're in the interview process, and we hope to have progress on that very soon. And we have posted the assistant principal position at the high school, and that screening committee is being formed this week as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to our final item of our business agenda, which is our budget update and discussion. We did at the last meeting vote to have this as a standing item on the agenda, which, you know, I think was an important step to take, but we certainly would have been talking about it anyway. A few things at this point that we'll get into as we get on. The administration and I did meet with the mayor and Barry Lacasse last week, so we'll have an update on that. You know, one thing that I thought was important in this discussion is that in talking about the budget so far, you know, the delta between what the city's indicating it's planning to give us and what level services are is so large. We've been focusing on filling a lot of that gap with the wage freeze, but really, it's filling it with salaries. And so there is no, as we know, guarantee that a wage freeze would be enacted. And so, you know, I think it is time, you know, that the public understands that, you know, if a wage freeze isn't enacted, that means bodies, and that means, you know, significant cuts for our schools. So with that being said, I just want to go through a quick slideshow here. Feel free to interrupt as we go through with any questions. This is the updated numbers. They're not very different from where we've been before. As you can see, we're still about a little more than $4 million short of a level service budget, and we are another $2.7 million from our proposed budget that we proposed back in December. So, as we get to that $4 million number, is going to be a gargantuan effort, to say the least. So the administration has gone through and prepared potential places where we could make cuts. As we'll see, even with all those cuts, we're nowhere near that level service number. And as we can discuss as we go through, these aren't a list of cuts that we would want to make every single one of. I mean, some of those, you know, combined with potential losses of teachers would be too problematic to make all these cuts listed, but it at least gets us to the numbers so we can have a better understanding of where we are. So, potential cuts, we've talked about transportation a few times. We know that this is something that the mayor is pushing strongly, that we cut our transportation budget either by cutting services or charging fees to students. If we charged a fee of $175 to each student to ride transportation, that would bring us approximately $315,000. Mr. Tyler, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, when we're talking about transportation is not part of net school spending.
So
Why are we incorporating this number into net school
the
spending?
mayor has told us, so we'll get into what the mayor has told us more going forward, but essentially what the mayor has told us is that he will give us the net school spending plus $1 million, and if we save anything from transportation, he'll let us keep that.
So whatever savings,
We get to keep. Exactly.
okay,
Right?
thank
So
you.
that's why it's included, but you're right, it's not net school spending, and there's no guarantee that 3 years from now it would, you know,
Yeah.
but that's been the promise for next year. Second, if we eliminated all academic coaching positions at the middle schools, that would be $240,000 in savings. When I mentioned before how we wouldn't be able to do all of these, especially in combination with proposed cuts, if we're going to be cutting proposed teaching positions, eliminating all academic coaches probably isn't the wisest step forward.
Can I, sorry.
Yes.
How many of those are already not filled?
And how many are filled?
4.
So we'd be losing 4 coaches in addition to the 2 that we're short.
Eliminating the after-school programs at the middle school, $160,000. We've talked about this ad nauseum for a good reason. This has been one of the priorities of the school committee and the administration for several years now. It would be a especially painful cut to make. We know that middle school is where we lose a lot of our children, and after-school programs is a way to keep them interested and keep them involved, and eliminating this would certainly hurt that effort. So, Geddes.
I'm sorry, going back to the coaching positions, we're talking about eliminating the positions, or we're talking about removing the staff that are in those positions and leaving the positions vacant?
Correct, that.
The second,
We wouldn't be
okay.
eliminating the position. I mean, the hope would obviously be that when funding is available, we would fill them. So we would be,
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Thank you.
And just quick, the after-school includes transportation?
Yes.
eliminate 12 paraprofessional positions throughout the district, be $240,000. Reduce swimming pool operations, $20,000. I think earlier we had a slide of, it was $50,000 to close the pool entirely. I think in reflection, having a giant crater in the building isn't the best move from a liability perspective. But Mr. Furtado, if you want to speak
This
to
would
it.
be taking on a model essentially where we outsource the operation of the pool. So the costs that the district has in maintaining the pool, both testing and supplies, would be eliminated from our responsibility. The group that would take on the management of the pool would then be liable for that, and that would be reflected in whatever fees they would charge for users of the pool. There would be a stipulation that the Attleboro swim team would have preference over whatever their schedule needs to be, as well as all of our therapeutic uses of the pool, so that those could not be precluded or interfered with. The company managing the pool would work around those things to generate revenue to cover their costs for operating the pool.
Mr. Geddes.
And I know that there's, the recreation department uses the pool as their consideration for increasing fees that way from the city's end, or?
Well, that not, in this concept,
Not that that's
yeah,
calculated
right.
here, but,
And, we don't charge the rec department for the use of the pool.
okay.
Except for next year, which is $4.1 million.
I don't think they have that kind of money in their budget either.
Eliminate support of athletic programs, $410,000. Mr. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you explain that one a little more in depth? Eliminate support of athletic program. That's,
Again,
what
the
are we
concept-
saying here?
Concept there was just to take the operating expense off of the budget and, basically make the programs fee-based, like hockey.
Entirely fee-based for every,
So students would have to pay their entire thing for whatever sport they have, including transportation costs for,
and this is another one, like transportation, that the mayor's pushing pretty hard. I mean, I think there was an expectation on his end that we would have done this by now. Mr. Quinn?
And this may be hard to say right off the top of your head, Mr. Furtado, but so let's say, what changes in terms of the cost for a family who happens to be playing basketball? Their child plays basketball. Were they're originally paying X and now they're paying what?
I would think fees would basketball's a tough one because the supplies and materials are lower.
Okay.
But the population's also smaller.
Okay.
But a doubling or tripling is not beyond reason, compared to what they're paying now in terms of user fees. The hockey user fee is $650. The athletic user fee is $150. So it'd be somewhere in between.
Okay. But closer to that hockey number.
Yeah.
Mr. Storrs?
Does this value take into account free and reduced lunch? Because students who are free reduced,
This is eliminating the operating dollars from the budget, so it's, again,
so there will still be no charge for those students.
for the programs that could survive on user fees, which, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Mr. Tyler?
thank you, just to piggyback on that, Mark. the students that can't pay for it do not have to pay for it.
If
So
you're-
how does that incorporate into the, I realize
That's why-
the cost is 410, but that's not really the cost.
Well, I think what, we would take all support for the athletics off our operating budget. And
Right.
so the athletic department would be covering the cost, so that meant user fees for those that could pay would be higher. The 410 is what we're paying this year, correct?
Yeah.
And that's just getting taken off.
Okay, so what,
That's
I'm
independent
just gonna
of the
throw you an
revenues.
example out,
Yeah.
soccer, and we was saying it's gonna cost $300 a year, because we're figuring 100 students take it, only a rough number. But if we really wanna go up with that number, it's more like $500 a year, because 50% of those kids, potentially, 50% of them are not gonna be able to pay that user fee.
Right,
So that fee will increase to the ones who are able to pay
right,
the fee.
right.
Okay.
Potential budget cuts, elimination of 2 central office clerical positions and all half-time clerical positions at the elementary schools.
That's a 4.5 FTE equivalent.
At the elementary schools, or
That-
total?
that whole-
Total.
Yeah.
Eliminate the assistant principal at Thatcher Elementary School. I think we all know we've been trying to get more assistant principals in the elementary schools, so. Yeah, Mrs. Torres.
Why is that only 45,000? I mean, assistant principal position, you know, with benefits is more. I know that more than likely that person would be able to backfill a different position if that's the route they wanted to go.
Right.
But that still seems low.
That position was at one time a technology support person, so that, yes, they would go back into the, teaching population and bump out at the end to, a new hire.
Right, but even a new hire with benefits is more than 45,000. That's why I'm questioning it.
Yeah, we don't typically incorporate benefits because there's going to be an offset with unemployment.
Employment for a year, okay. Or 4, yeah.
Reductions to individual contract positions, 90,000. I believe that's an elimination of a district courier, and what was there's a second,
Yeah, we had 2 positions to choose from, a registrar's position and a assistant to the Aspen director's position. And whichever one were to go, the other person would, take on the,
dual role.
Hang on a second. That person makes $90,000 a year.
No,
2
So
positions.
you get rid of both of them?
no, there's also a
Courier.
courier.
Okay.
Sorry.
If you want to explain the top one, Mr. Furtado?
Yeah, we have an exercise of a 5th year of the Sodexo agreement, and again, I had the pleasure of being here during the recession. So there was a time there where we had to, basically sit down and say, listen, the increase in the new year is a 2.5% increase, and it's about $56,000, and we would sit down with Sodexo and reduce that number. I've done it before. It may require some reconfiguration of how they do things, but we would come to an agreement to reduce their increase for next year.
10% reduction in supplies.
That's just across the board.
Yeah, last year we cut by how much? Similar amount?
Well, and that goes back to the earlier comment about donations. I mean, and having taught, it seems like
Right.
a silly thing, but when you start dealing within scarcity of paper, it creates, it can harm a really positive culture.
Absolutely.
It's these
No
little
question.
things that, and then knowing most teachers, they're going to dig into their own pockets.
Right.
And which it seems like what they're doing as it stands.
2016 budget freeze to prepay tuitions and necessities for 2017. This is, just is what
We
it
would
says.
manage our end of year to allow for some funds to accumulate to allow us to purchase materials for next year, as well as what we did this year, prepay some of our special education tuitions. Hopefully, we could hit that number. That's not a promise.
Yeah. increased revenue from new programs, regulations. This is the middle school network program,
Right,
and reduced payments to Tri-County. But as we
What you
know,
just
now
discussed, right.
that number could very well be cut in half if we're able to reach a compromise.
Correct.
So, that's a number that's probably may very well go down. Mr. Geddes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The middle school network program, the cost factored into that, is that a net cost after hiring new staff?
Hiring the staff too, yep.
Okay.
We have about a half dozen students at about, all in about $17,000 a year.
And
I'm sorry, $45,000 a year each.
And how many new staff would be coming in for the
Two or
program?
three for that,
Mr. Quinn?
maybe a portion of another.
Do we admit students from other districts into that program? Because I see the revenue piece.
We have historically, again, I don't know if it's the case in the last 18 months, but historically we have brought in one or two kids every year or two into our high school program, yes.
So it's just more evidence of the schools trying to find new sources of revenue to help kind of supplement other gaps.
Yep.
Ms. Gill?
When will we know for sure on whether this is gonna get off the ground or not?
The network.
Network program.
Yes.
I'm here.
Yeah,
Would
yeah,
you like me
yeah,
to respond?
yes, yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah.
The middle school application was submitted to DESE about 8 weeks ago. We did an HBN increase to describe our program between the middle school and the high school program. And I have spoken to our DESE rep, who indicates she does not see a problem. I asked to have a commitment, obviously. I'm hoping to hear in the next couple of weeks the program is approved. We just got the network high school program approved, so I didn't want to send the middle school application until that one was complete. So it is in process. They haven't requested more documentation from the application, so I'm hoping we'll be hearing soon.
Thank you.
I think that, also kind of goes to a point where, some of these things, we're not going to know, the revenue, a revenue program or bringing in revenue if we're going to have it or not by the time we have to set the budget.
Right.
Mr. Geddes?
And it's also worth noting that if we may not have been in this budget situation if we had been properly funded in special education programs previously. Like we've had a deficit because we've been sending so many students out of district for special ed services. So that we're able to start bringing them back is helpful. Just wish we were under
Tremendously
better
helpful.
circumstances.
Yeah.
Mr. Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's gonna be members of the administration that don't wanna hear this, but, how much money are we spending on the network program on a year? About 900,000? That
No.
close?
No, it's about half a million.
Half a million? But I don't see anything up there for cuts of that. So we're gonna take away from kids that can function in a traditional classroom setting, and yet there's no plans to take away anything from kids that can't.
Well, no, they'd be part of the supply cut. Part of keeping the cost of starting the middle school network program low is that they're going to leverage some of the personnel like guidance and the directorship to oversee that middle school program.
And school adjustment.
Right.
Ms. Gill?
I also think it's important to note that it would cost even more for us to send those kids out of district if we didn't have the network program.
It does, yeah.
So you have to remember that too.
Yeah, I think the next slide.
I'm sorry, but all of these are ridiculous, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, of course they
Put
are.
up on the board today, but the point being, if we do get to that point in time, the decisions we gotta make are going to devastate. this year. We see something up there, we just added last year that we needed for years, an assistant principal, and then take that. It's just-
Well, I
And we're
think
not
to
even
the
talking
chair-
about all the items that we've had up there that we need, that we haven't filled the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, that's, what's just as damaging as the cuts. I mean, we've had positions that we've needed to fill for 2 or 3 years that we've talked about, and we're not even getting to talk about it the last couple of months.
And I think it's important to note, as the chairman opened, all of these things we're discussing are not going to get us to $4 million. there are additional things that are gonna need to happen even with all of this.
So all those cuts that were listed, total approximately 2.779. I mean, approximately. That leaves us, even if we were to make all those cuts, $1.3 million short, with nowhere else to cut. And just on an idea, talking about teachers and educators, because we can't just say wage freeze and hope that it happens. If it doesn't happen, $1 million would be approximately 33 teachers, 1.5 is approximately 50 teachers, and 2 million is more than 66 teachers. And I'm sorry, 1.5 is more than 50 teachers, because you get up in the wage scale as you're getting, the more, the higher you hit. And I mean, if you just think of 33 teachers, that's 11 at each level. 66 is 22 at each level, if my math is correct. I mean, talk about drastic cuts that would set us back significantly. So we've talked about this ad nauseum also. I'm not going to get into it, but I just think it's important to just remember how Attleboro has set its school budget now for the past several years. They take the number that we all agree is flawed, which is the net school spending number, and then they just add $1 million to it. There's no thought given to what the needs of the schools are, or what's going on across the state. It's strictly, they get a number, they add $1 million to it, and that's really the end of the discussion. As a result of that, over the past several years, Attleboro has lagged woefully behind what the rest of the state has done in spending on education. It's unacceptable and it's embarrassing, but it's the reality. And when you take that fact and you look at what we're asking for, it shows that what we're asking for is fair and reasonable. We're asking for a level service budget that would be 7.75% above net school spending, which would still be in the 200s. There can be no argument that what we're asking for is unreasonable or unfair. And so I think that's part of the reason why I think the meeting with the mayor last week was disappointing. I think the message to us was clear that we'll be getting net school spending plus $1 million, with the caveat that if we force our students to pay to ride the bus, or if we cut busing services, we'll be able to keep the savings. The argument was that there's no money, or that the teachers are paid too much, and that's been in the paper as well, that they've said that. I don't think either of those arguments are supported by the facts or by reality, but that's the argument, that's the stance they're taking, and I think it's pretty clear that that's the stance that they're sticking to. So that being said, there still is time. I think we still need to be advocating strongly. We're certainly not going to present a budget that doesn't meet our needs. We're going to present a budget that would allow us to move forward to where we can, and if we'll just continue to advocate as much as we can. I think the community is finally starting to understand the reality of the situation, and we've got to continue to get them to do so. We've been working hard. We've discussed this, I think, at every meeting this term. We did adopt the foundation budget review resolution. There's been several media appearances. We met with the city council. We had an article in the Sun Chronicle. Met with the mayor. We started correspondence with bargaining units. And we also started meeting with school-based organizations to get the message out to them. So they understand what's coming, the reality of the situation, so that they can understand what they can do to help, and so that they know what we're doing, that we're not sitting on our hands and accepting this, which I think is important. Ms. Scales?
Oh, never mind.
No?
No, I think not.
Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, yeah, I know I can't believe that there's not a big public outcry at this point. It's just an irresponsible budget brought down by the state. It's pitting this school committee up against the city. I think that was part of what it was supposed to do in the first place, but it's just irresponsible to do things this way. If you want to start something on a downward slide or not give the traditional funding, then there has to be some type of timeline involved in that. You can't just shut things off, it's like a spigot. It doesn't work that way when we have rising costs. There's been a lot of talk from people in the citywide about the raises for our teachers. Well, as the only school committee member still serving on the school committee. I was on that ad hoc committee with Ms. Singer and Mr. Murphy. And those teachers deserve those raises. They deserved every bit they got of those raises. People are forgetting something. Without those hardworking teachers in front of our educators, in front of our kids every day, everything else we do doesn't mean anything. That's the core of what we're supposed to be doing. So, I mean, I'm hoping that they will come back to the table and work with us so we don't have to be devastated like this. But if they don't, in my opinion, I can't blame them. They got the lowest raise of anybody in this city. It was very fair, equitable negotiations, and they deserve it. I can't believe there's not more of an outcry to our state legislators about what they're doing here. You know, they're decimating the city of Attleboro, and they're pitting the municipality against the schools, and nobody wins in that circumstance. Nobody.
Mr. Quinn, Mr. Geddes?
I do think it's important to note, too, that our voice has been heard, at least with the state senate. The state senate passed the RISE Act, I believe it was on Thursday of last week, which incorporated the Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations. Now, whether or not that's going to get passed in the House, I don't know. But at least some parts of the state are getting the message, and I remain hopeful. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic that the city will, take similar actions and move towards what I believe is a fair number. At least 3 million would put us at the state median for spending over net school spending, and any movement towards that. I mean, we've made our needs clear, and we're not even talking about the positions that you adopted in your last budget. The assistant principals to alleviate some of the pressure off the principals, the guidance support that we need in order to execute our strategic plan. And that's not counting all the positions that have been lost over the years. The guidance counselors at the middle school, the foreign language that we've lost, reading specialist, central office. Once you cut these positions, it becomes just harder and harder to get them back. And then I'm just thinking, if for some reason we have to lay off all of these teachers, now we've eliminated all these coaches to help teachers be able to support those large class sizes. We're in a tough spot.
Where are we at as far as the state side of things? I mean, the last was the governor had sent his budget. So where are we at?
There have been multiple reports out of the legislature that they're not going to enact any of the reforms put forth by the commission because they don't have the money this year. So there's been no indication at all on the state side that anything is going to change. There was Representative who did send an email out regarding some consideration in terms of the poverty measure, and that they were going to alter that a little bit, and what that would have returned to Attleboro. Again, everything helps, but it was something in the neighborhood of $140,000, which really doesn't address our problem at all.
To kind of piggyback off of what Mr. Quinn said, and maybe to simplify and more bluntly put it, we're in year one of a 5-year strategic plan of a mission and vision of where we want this district to go. It was something that members of this entire community, it wasn't just educators, it was members of the entire community and where they wanted our district to go. And these cuts really take us in the opposite direction. They're pulling us away from where we want to be going. There's a lot of pride about our schools. There's a lot of bragging about what our schools have done, what our students accomplish, but we're not supporting them like we should be. We're not looking, it doesn't look like we're going to support them like we should. We're making some significant reductions in our services and in what our educators can provide and what we as a school district can provide. But I'm not, we are still funded by the city. And I said this when we were meeting with city councilors, where this is a municipal department, it's a municipal budget, and I think we need to be treated as such. So we're trying to get creative with how we can tighten things up on our end, and we are, I think the analogy made at that meeting with the councilors was we're beyond the bone, we're to the marrow. And I just hope that there is some creative ways on the other side that some money can be found to put towards us. Yeah. Hopefully.
I think what's frustrating, and Ms. Sawyer, is that, you know, we are, I mean, these are significant cuts we're talking about here. We're going to extreme measures to try and meet this budget shortfall, and the lack of willingness to even meet us halfway or anywhere in between is really frustrating. And there's been none of that. And other than to say, you know, that you need to get on the state, have the state provide more funds. The state's not solving this problem this year. The state has indicated that they're putting more of it on the municipalities. It's not, I don't like the way they've done it. I agree with what Mr. Tyler said, to just cut the spigot and, you know, say work it out, you know, is not the way to go about it. But they are not solving the problem, and the lack of willingness to meet us, you know, somewhere in between here to get through this is really frustrating. Ms. Sawyer?
These possible cuts are just heartbreaking, and our students deserve so much better. I'm at a loss for words.
Mr. Larson?
I don't think it's going to help this year because, listening to the way the rhetoric's coming out of the State House, but I would like to thank the City Council last week. They did take and assign the resolution that we've already forwarded up to the state, and I think within the next week or so, you're going to see the City Council also adopt that resolution, and I think that'll help in the future, put some leverage at the state level. I think the more cities and towns get together and put some pressure from that point of view, as a united front, will certainly help. I don't think it's going to help anything in the short term, but I do want to thank them for taking that up, and I think you're going to see them pass that in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in general, actually, the City Council this year has been very attentive and helpful. They understand. They've met with us. They've had a lot of discussions with a lot of members on this committee, with a lot of counselors. They've been helpful in trying to do what they can.
They know where we are.
They know where we are,
Yep.
and they see it. So, you know, maybe that's, you know, a good sign for the future, but it just doesn't seem to be having the impact right now that we need. Mr. Quinn?
I think a lot of times when we talk about the cuts and the impact on the schools, but I think, you know, another point I'd really like to stress is that quality schools lift up the entire community, and that's backed by a lot of research. There's research out of Michigan State that shows that a quality school department raises perceived quality of life amongst people, increases property values, which other people talk about, but quality schools also lead to decreased crime and better health of the community members. And by investing in the schools, you're investing in the community. And I think it's important to note the benefits that are paid to all members of the community. And one of the great things about our strategic plan, which you mentioned earlier, is that we're trying to get our students out into the community to benefit. I think you've seen it with some of the AHS history government classes. I think there was a meeting with the Public Works Department where students researched how to fill potholes, and they brought it down from Boston into the city. So we're looking for a mutually beneficial type relationship here with the schools and the community. But it's important to note that when we talked about the vision as the center of the community, it's to lift everybody else up as well. It's not just can you provide for the schools.
Okay. Well, just scheduling our next meeting, April 25th, is a public hearing on the budget. So, you know, we'll be discussing that in advance, but the April 25th will be our public hearing, and then we'll be considering the administration's recommended budget to submit to the city in early May. Mr.
Yeah, for
Tata.
the committee's benefit, the public hearing is on the level service budget.
Yes. And we have a couple more meetings this week with community organizations. I believe it's school organizations. Tomorrow it's Brennan. Is that at 6:30? And we'll be meeting with on Wednesday. It's the high school.
Yes.
And on Thursday we'll be meeting with ACE-PAC. So, thank you, Mr. Furtado. Don't go anywhere though.
No.
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Larson for the Finance and Budget Subcommittee report.
Finance and Budget Subcommittee met April 6th. We had a good discussion. Mr. Furtado reviewed the monthly financials with us, answered the questions that we had. We do have a number of motions that came from that subcommittee for approval by the full committee. Most of all these, with the exception of the last two, are annual agreements that we've been doing for a number of years. They're just a series of one-year agreements that we have with different groups. And I believe you've had copies of all these agreements go out to you in the packet from the chairman. So first, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the applicant's agreement as written.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Second, motion to approve the BICO collaborative agreement as written.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve the written agreement with Bishop Fee High School for the use of the pool.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, quick question.
Mr. Quinn? Sorry?
Maybe
Probably gonna be the same question, yeah.
Is there a reason why the agreement we have with Bishop Feehan is different from the agreement that we have with Bluefish? Because they're both pool usage, they both have different rules associated with them.
Yep. Bluefish derives a revenue from the pool. Bishop Feehan is simply using the pool for their interscholastic swim team. So there's no revenue associated with.
Okay, I
So
just didn't know if,
yeah,
because
yeah.
there were some like rules, like one of them had no food allowed on the deck, the other one didn't, stuff like that. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, Bishop Feehan typically does not engage in that kind of stuff. We've had some zombie
Concerns.
issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart?
So with both of these, Bishop Fee and the Bluefish one that'll be next, if we do go forward with the pool recommendation for the budget, how does that affect that?
They would negotiate their fees with the management company at that point. Again, Mr. Hool would indicate to the company when he would need the pool. Our schools would indicate to the company when other uses of the pool would be required. And then, again, within that context, they would be free to rent out the pool.
So our contracts with the two groups would stop when we enact that?
Correct.
And they'd
If
have
we
to
were to
renew-
do that,
If we
yes.
were to do that, okay. That's
Good question. Any other discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve the Bluefish agreement as written.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Motion to approve the Smarts collaborative agreement for the rental office space in the old high school as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. This is slightly different from last year, so we'd like to entertain a motion to approve the accepted Smarts license agreement, reducing the Smarts summer camp fee by 50%, which would be approximately a $3,000 savings for the Smarts Collaborative. I have a couple comments once we have this.
So moved.
Second.
This came up through a discussion that we had at the subcommittee. The Smarts Collaborative, like many organizations, is it's one that a lot of our students benefit from. It's something that we'd like to see continue moving forward. They are having a hard time. It's not going to make, the subcommittee's thoughts were it wasn't really going to have a big impact on us one way or the other if we could help them out a little bit. So our thought to bring forward to the full committee was to reduce their tuition and help keep them a little more fiscally solvent. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And the last is the motion to approve the request for a budget transfer of $3,390 from the field trip transportation line to the psychological consultant contract line.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. All right, next we have our open forum. This is a time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. Is there anyone who would like to address the school committee open forum? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Barry Kaplan, 26 Cumberland Ave, Attleboro, Mass. I wanted to speak on behalf of, we have a few parents here in terms of the Tri-County and Attleboro 603 CMR 403. And I've got some thoughts, okay? I've talked a lot, spoke to Mr. Sheehan last Wednesday. And I think I sent you an email. And it sounds like from the comments, from some of the board members, there is some concern for these students, which I appreciate. Knowing some of the things and obstacles that we're looking at, and also in reference to Chapter 76, Section 12, I'd like to understand where you're getting that legal advice, because understand your perspective, but probably disagree with it, because it is a statute, okay? And it does give you the right as a school committee to make that decision. It's clear. And statutes supersede regulations every time. So I'm not sure where you're getting those where you're getting your advice from, but I would tell you I'm hoping to get it in writing from Deb Comfort and the Board of Education, but I would hope it didn't have to go that far. At the end of the day, I asked this question to you. I haven't got an answer. What's the penalty? What's the penalty if you guys were to make that decision? There is no penalty. There is none. We could avoid having to transfer kids in the middle of a school year, okay, just to satisfy the exploratory. Let's be rational. Let's make some common sense decisions here, because ultimately there are no penalties. And you're a lawyer. How many times are there laws without a penalty? Okay, and I think the parents, for our children who went through the process of applying, interviewing, and setting up testing, to have this come out in the newspaper was quite a surprise and quite disturbing, to be quite honest. Where that blame lies, I don't know. But all I can tell you is the children, the 10 children we're talking about, are devastated. Okay? My daughter, okay, Samantha, has been looking at this for 4 years. My oldest daughter, Madison, graduated from Tri-County last year. Okay? And what she's looking to get into will not be open if we allow this to go for a year. It won't be. Let's be clear about that. My wife is on the boosters. We're very involved with Tri-County. There is no way those spots would be left open. So if we're truly concerned about the children, I would ask you to think about 7612 again. And I would also think about what is the penalty if you make that decision. I can also tell you other superintendents have made that decision and have approved children to go. And I've spoken to the Board of Education multiple times. They would never get involved if you approved. Okay? Never. Because the parents back here, we're not going to appeal a decision that you make to allow the children to go. So I will tell you honestly, I believe that a period of time, by hearing the conversation today, I feel a little better about that this was all about money. With the $4 million budget gap, this is about $150,000 savings that the school committee could save. I hope that's not the case, because I don't believe that's what, and number one, right on your list of your responsibilities to think about the children. Okay? And to me, these children, these 10 children, deserve the right to explore what they want to explore, and without having disruption and interruption of having to spend a half of a school year at a school that they don't want to be at, and go through the trials and tribulations that they'll have to go through, to then have to get them acclimated. Because I tell you, all 10 of them, even if you make that as if you make that as part of and you make that coordination, 10 going, they're all going. Okay, so one thing I can tell you as parents, we're going back to the Board of Education and fighting this long term, because it makes no sense. I'd say differently if these courses were available at Attleboro, I'd tell you a completely different story. But they're not. And you're taking away a right for these children. And that, to me, is despicable, to be quite honest. If you have seen my daughter, I wish I should have brought her here today. This girl probably hasn't slept in a month because of this. Okay? And that, to me, you guys can make a decision. Okay? You can make a decision. I've talked to the Board of Education multiple times. And again, I'll go back to two things. 7612 gives you the right. What's the penalty? There is none.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee at open forum? That closes open forum. At this time, I entertain a motion to enter into executive session. The Attleboro School Committee convene an executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union and union personnel. The Attleboro School Committee will not be reconvening in open session.
So moved.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Tyler?
Yes.
Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Withers, yes. Mrs. Scales?
Yes.
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Geddes?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer? All right, let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we will convene in executive session.